Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the In Your Mind podcast.
Dun, 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 dun.
Boing, wong, wong,
Hello and welcome back to another week of In Your Mind. Today we're going to be talking about spirituality and how organised religion is on the decline while spirituality is gaining a lot of momentum, and lots of the younger generation, like our generation, is really being drawn towards spirituality. And we're going to discuss some reasons as to why we think that is, and why I'll discuss personally why I feel drawn to spirituality. And yeah, we'll just have a bit of a conversation around it. So I was looking at a article from Deakin University talking about this decline of organised religion, and it was saying that in their study, it found the majority of teens in Australia, so 52%, don't identify with a religion. And there's around 37% of those believe in God. It also says that a lot of the spiritual ideas that we're drawn to, or that our generation are drawn to, are the Asian religions traditions, with 50% of teens believing in karma, and about a third, 29%, believe in reincarnation. This study kind of talks about our generation having like an eclectic style of beliefs.
Eclectic.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Eclectic, like bits and pieces.
Yeah. That part in and of itself is quite interesting because we've read a book on karma and the like the popular understanding of karma is not actually what it means. But how would you describe how most people would define karma?
I would say the popular belief of karma is that if you do negative, you get negative. If you do positive, you get positive. It's a system, a score system, that if you do one thing positive, you get one thing negative back. And that's would be the popular view, I would say.
You know what that sounds like?
What?
The law of attraction.
Very similar.
Yeah. But it's less about doing and more about being.
Yeah, it definitely comes up in a lot of different cultures and religions.
I feel like that's such like a basic statistic. Like, how many people do you know that don't believe in karma? Like, I feel like most people would. Like, that's just a common thing in general.
Yeah.
And 29% in reincarnation. I think that's a pretty average number of people. 3 in 10 people, maybe a little less if you went out and surveyed the majority of people.
Yeah, so then if that's the common belief of karma, how do you think how would you explain Sadhguru's definition of karma?
In the book called Karma, from what I remember and what I understand, I would just describe it as like the memory of energy that is stored in a specific way so that it becomes a system, and that system has a memory. And so, for example, your body has different types of memory. Like, you have the memory that you think about, like you remember what your name is, how old you are, all those types of things. But your body also has a memory. Like, in your genetic code, that is a different type of memory. Like, you don't remember who your ancestors are or anything before you were even alive, but your body remembers that and your genetic code remembers that. So it's more like that's a physical type of karma. There's like a bunch in there.
Yeah, he talks about, I think it was 8 different ways of karma.
Yeah.
And yeah, generational karma, body karma.
But yeah, it's not in the sense of good or bad.
And it's not tit for tat.
Yeah. A lot of, I think, Eastern religion is quite, what I like about it is it doesn't place any, I don't know if value is the right word, on things. Like, it's very objective. You're more in the place of an observer than someone who is participating.
So why then do you think people are rejecting organised religion and stepping away from it? Why is there less people in churches these days?
I don't know why other people aren't, but I can say for me, like, the way it's presented is, like, it's so misrepresented for what it actually is, what it's about. Like, scripture in school, I feel like, is such a critical part. Like, it's your first impression of religion if you don't grow up in a religious family. It
Yeah.
was for me, at least. And scripture in school sucks for me and for a lot of people that I knew. But when you actually get into what religion means and what is said between the lines, you know, like, there's so much good knowledge that you can distill from it and live your life with. And I think that's just been lost.
Or it's been like overcasted, like there's a shadow that's been placed over it.
Yeah.
Because as you said, like the lessons that you can learn through like a narrative setting of like scripture and tales is so powerful, and you can picture the role of that person and why that they did that thing. Like, it's a good way of teaching values and morals and having an understanding of why people do things and having some sort of higher power as well. So I enjoyed religion in schools. I enjoyed learning about the stories, but I was always quite confused about the way in which it was delivered, because some people would talk about it as actually have happened, and then other teachers would talk about it as like just a tale. So I think I got kind of caught up within that. But I think really what remained was the tales and the lessons and the values that came from it. And I could still see that and still witness it and still understand the value that it did have.
Yeah.
But I think I personally felt as if it was very rigid or very controlled and very, you believe this, therefore you believe this and this. Like, it comes with a list of rules or a list of practices, a list of things to follow. And if you don't do that, you're not abiding by it and you go to hell. Or, you know, there's these concrete big statements in there that feel quite strong and assertive, and it's not something
And they're sometimes
that I could reason with. Contradictory, and I wasn't fully able to understand it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from a pretty early age I went, oh, I'm just going to create my own religion. Like, that's kind of how I thought about it. I was like, I'm just going to pull things from different religions that we're learning about it, because we did do religion studies. We learned about Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhs. We learned about, Catholic, obviously, Christians. Yeah, and from that, it was cool to see what values overlapped and remained as like a thread within all of them. Then being able to decide what you enjoyed from parts of them and the parts that you didn't. And it didn't feel like something you were being shamed for if you were to do a bad thing or something too.
Yeah, you just look for like the universal laws almost that every story follows.
And I think that's really what spirituality is.
The universal law.
The universal laws that govern all religions or all higher power things and thinking.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And that's really what drew me towards it as well. And
although there are some aspects of spirituality that are unique to spirituality, I would say. Like they've taken perhaps a part of some religion and then expanded upon it.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is like happened to every religion ever. Yeah.
But it's just new, so it's some of it doesn't have its roots.
Still growing.
Yeah.
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 Still being written.
Yeah. And that's kind of the exciting thing as well, because you can keep adding to it or keep exploring other concepts or new concepts and then link it with older practices from other parts of religions too, which feels really fun and creative and is kind of, quite a freeing experience to be able to choose what you believe in and reject what you don't.
I think we live in quite a unique time. Like, if you would classify spirituality as a type of religion, that, like, I don't know about the history of spirituality, but it seems like it's beginning to really gain traction. And it seems like now is the time that it's being written and created. And who knows, there might be books like you hear about in other religions written about spirituality that people are going to read in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, how I kind of came across spirituality was through a book called The Green Witch, and it talked about pagans and people and communities of people with different beliefs working with the elements. And it does have pretty ancient roots with that. But then obviously it then talks about
modern spirituality is,
Yeah, it talks about variations of that and how the elements were used, and that's kind of what a lot of spirituality
is built on.
Can be led to, is from that concept of the elements and of water, fire and earth and air.
See, I feel like that's a different
spirituality as well.
Yeah. I don't know if it's different, like if it's a different subcategory, but yeah, I would strictly just define spirituality. Like, I don't know if I would relate it to elements at all. Like, it's not really attached to this dimension, you know?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you could see it through elements, but you could also just see it within anything. So as you look at a leaf or a bottle or anything that's physically manifested, you can also think of spirituality.
Although that being said, like, spirituality is a religion where universe is God.
Yeah.
So I think, where, like, obviously the universe is made out of elements. And in ancient history, people referred to elements a lot. So, yeah, I mean, it does make sense, I guess.
Yeah.
I think just maybe like the stigmatism around that kind of side of spirituality, like crystals and elements and, you know, all that sort of stuff, gets a bit of like flack from more traditional thinking groups.
I think for me, it's just a way to find gratitude and appreciation for how life is built upon, really.
Yeah.
And the things that are needed to form life or how we've progressed through life. And it's appreciating those things that have sustained the earth and that have sustained us as well. So I think it's it makes sense to give thanks and to appreciate something, a higher power of something that is so physically ingrained as well. Like, it shows itself through the physical in its ability to have creation. So on the other hand, there's also a lot of people who don't believe in anything anymore. So with reduced religion, there's also been reduced beliefs in general about a higher power or about a god or anything. So how would you explain that? Or why do you think that is?
Well, I think for me, when I was first introduced to organized religion and that idea of it, and I'm going to say the vibe of the whole thing, which is kind of like an arbitrary thing to say, but that's like the best way I can describe it, was not like a fit for me. So because the way organized religion is, like you said, it's very like, you do this, you follow these guidelines, and this is what it is. Like, there's no varying outside of that. If I didn't like any part of that, then I just rejected organized religion altogether.
Yeah.
And that only leads to atheism. And like, if you're not this all the way, then you're nothing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the other part to it as well would be the rise of empirical evidence and scientific thinking and discoveries. And I think spirituality is a hard thing for the very rational mind to contemplate and to acknowledge.
I think before the science has come out, like maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would agree with that. But
So do you mean now with the scientific like evidence of quantum theory? Yeah.
But even before then, right? Because like I studied physics from high school.
Yeah.
And so many of the laws and just like the concepts and understanding how it all works and how they fit together and the unity of it all. It's easier to piece it together when you have those like basic fundamental blocks. Like quantum theory is just like the key that, unlocks it,
How did understanding quantum theory or physics help you in discovering and embracing spirituality?
Well, it was just like another expression of how the laws of the universe work and everything is linked together.
So what is quantum theory for somebody that doesn't know?
Quantum theory is just the physics and the science of the really, really small, like subatomic level. Yeah. So you have your everyday size, the things you can see, and then you have like stuff you can see in a microscope. Then you have molecules a few levels down from that. And then in molecules you have atoms. And then in atoms you have quantum particles. And down at that level
Like photons?
Yeah.
And electrons?
Yeah. Well, even smaller than that.
Photons are smaller than
not
electrons.
photons, sorry. Photons are well, not exactly, but it's the whole like field is quite fuzzy because once you get down that small, it's like impossible to say everything for certain. But yeah, it gets into a whole bunch of like probability statistics and like there's just so many things rolled into one. Yeah. The theories in quantum mechanics kind of just describe the very exact mechanisms of why these larger theories work, like why gravity exists and stuff like that. Like that hasn't been solved yet, but that's like the purpose. Because like if you want to understand the whole of something, like if you want to understand how your phone works, you have to break your phone apart, break it down to smaller pieces. Okay, it's got a battery that provides power. It's got a screen that lights up. It's got buttons that you can press to interact with it. So like when you come to the universe, to understand how the universe works, you have to keep breaking it down until eventually you can't break it down anymore, and you've got the core elements, the core parts. And then from there, seeing how they're assembled, you can do experiments and then figure out what does what's the part of this, and Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with that knowledge then, still like how would you place spirituality, how would you liken spirituality to quantum theory?
It's just the science behind spirituality. Like quantum mechanics just explains scientifically like spirituality, like the oneness of everything. And
how?
Well, one of the biggest things in quantum mechanics is the power of observation. Like there is the particle wave duality, and everything is a wave until you observe it, and then it becomes a particle. Like there's an infinite field of possibilities. Like say we're in a vacuum, but the vacuum is infinitely large, and there's one quanta of energy in there. That energy could be theoretically anywhere in the infinite space until you observe it and see the spot where it is. So the wave function collapses into a particle. So by you observing something that has infinite possibilities, you are creating the particle in essence. And so in spirituality and like the law of attraction and how the universe like has a plan for you and all this stuff, like how you can control like your reality and all
how
stuff.
you're
Like
a creator.
It's linked, and the science, like that's just the science that explains how that works. Does that make sense? So yeah, a specific theory would be like the observing. You observe, make a particle collapse, and on a bigger scale, like you can. If you observe positive things, you'll create more positive things. If you observe bad things, you'll create more bad things. It's like karma. Like people believe in karma. It's the same thing. It's the law of attraction. And quantum mechanics can back that up.
Explain that, yeah. There's a science for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's all the same. Like this links to this, links to this, links to that.
So why then do you think if people are scientifically drawn or engaged in scientific fields, do you think that they're atheists?
Well, because it's impossible to tell for 100% certainty. Yeah. I think that's why.
400% certainty.
For 100% certainty.
Oh, 400%. Yeah.
Because like if you're skeptical of something and it's not 100% certain and you're like, you believe it's not true.
Yeah.
Like if it's not 100%, then that's just proof that it might not be true. And so you can hold your position in believing it's not true.
Yeah.
So I think that's why.
Yeah, because quantum theory is a theory that has been proved before, but it's not to say that maybe one experiment might not prove it.
Yeah.
Depending on the experiment.
In a very basic way of explaining it. But
that's the same
when
as
you come
everything.
To think about it, exactly.
Like
yeah,
it's
that's
the
what I
same
was gonna
with everything. And that's what the constant thing that we kept getting talked about in psychology and with proving anything. Your design, your subject design is critical for how it's going to turn out positive or negative, if it's going to have any statistical weight at all.
Yeah. Because like every experiment under the sun ever, like anything that we've done to prove quote unquote something
has an agenda.
Has agendas. It has human bias. It has a billion assumptions that you make that is based off stuff that you've already made assumptions off to prove that. So you're like stacking bias on top of bias on top of,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You already have like a full memory or a full like wardrobe of things that you believe in, a cognitive bias collection.
Well, it basically just comes down to probability. Like, we believe the sky is blue because every single day we've woken up, like, it's still blue. It's always blue. It might not be blue tomorrow because, we can't say for certain 100%.
Yeah.
That's why, like, conspiracy theorists and, like, people who just don't believe in the craziest things because, like, of that natural law. Like, everything is probability.
Yeah.
Quantum mechanics again.
Yeah. So cool.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. And then now we're designing quantum computers.
Yeah.
And that is a headache and a half.
Yeah, that's a
Complete
that's a
other
conversation for another episode, as well as AI.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you were once a non-believer in anything, an atheist, really. How do you think, with your changed beliefs, your life has been impacted?
It just makes me happier, like,
Do you
in
think
the most general terms.
Do you think it's because you feel that there's something taking care of you?
No, because I believe that we are in the driver's seat. Like, I feel in control. Not of every single aspect, because I think right now, and for myself especially, I don't have full control over my subconscious mind. So there's always, again, a probability that bad things will happen or something that I don't intend to happen will happen.
Yeah.
But I just believe I have full control, and whatever I want to do, whatever I want to happen, I can make it happen. Might take a long time, might suck for a long time, but eventually, if I really want to and I dedicate and commit myself to it, it will happen.
Yeah.
And like, if you know that intuitively, then like, I feel like it's impossible to not enjoy life.
Yeah.
So that's why.
It's how it's benefited
That's how
you.
it's benefited me. Yeah. Is it different for you?
I think that is something that I've thought without and with spirituality, is that I have the ability to do anything and to choose the life that I want. Because I think that has been really ingrained in me through other ways, like other people having a lot of belief in me and doing really cool things as well, and telling me that it's possible, and that drive behind me as well. So I don't think that has really been the biggest change. I think the biggest change is that I feel that the universe and my life is more special, and I feel more empathy for it and more love and compassion for all humans, because I think that a lot of us, we can be conscious of the processes that are happening, or we can be unconscious of the processes that are happening, and neither is better or worse. It just is. But there's circumstances that have happened and choices that have been made as well. And sometimes if you're not aware of something, then how could you have known, or how would you act any differently? So I think I have more compassion for people that aren't the same as me through spirituality and through...
Well, it's like understanding the law of cause and effect. Like, if you were to live in... It's like the egg as well.
If you were to live in their life.
If you were to live their life exactly with their karma, the way we were defining it before, in their body with the exact same energy states of down to every atom.
Yeah.
And you would live the same life, you would make the same, you'd think the same.
With their biology.
You would be them.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah,
you have empathy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting as well, like today I had a lecture on psychopathology, and she was talking about how we shouldn't be looking at people with abnormal psychology, like with mental illnesses or personality disorders, as less than. They just have a condition. It's because you don't know that their lived experience.
Yeah.
And that was really the core message of it, which I think was really good too, because it's true. It's fundamentally true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you feel sorry for them, or say someone had give me a mental disability.
Narcissism.
It doesn't really work. But if, like, you wouldn't want to be a narcissist because you're comparing that experience to the experience you have now. And that is, quote unquote, less favorable than the one you have now. But if you were a narcissist and you were comparing yourself as a narcissist to yourself without being a narcissist, then you'll probably prefer to be a narcissist because you don't care about what other people think and blah,
100%.
blah, blah, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like they say as well, if everyone came out and put all their problems in a pile and you get to pick through and choose which problems you want,
Yeah.
you would always take your own back.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Because you've dealt with it and you've understood it and you've been through it.